Hello and welcome to The Importance of Amendments, a presentation by Solutions IRB. My name is Cassidy Nosecable and I'm pretty new to the IRB world as well, so we'll be learning this together. So what is an amendment? An amendment is a modification to the currently approved study protocol. And this could really be anything. It could be personnel changes, either removals or additions of staffing. It could be protocol changes, changes in recruitment methods, consent changes, removal of an item, or really any other changes to the study outside of what has already been reported to the IRB. And this is really important because one word in a consent form could change the whole meaning of a study. So these things really have to be reported to us so that we can make sure that you are still protecting your participants. And an important thing to note is that amendments should not be so major that they change the scope of the approved study. You don't want your amendment to completely change what your study is about or completely change the risks to your participants because that might warrant a whole new study being submitted rather than just a change to your current study. Knowing when to submit an amendment is going to help you a lot in the long run. And like I said on the previous slide, really anytime you're making a change to the study, you're going to want to submit that as an amendment. Whether the change is big or small, you must submit an amendment if it's different from the information presented in the approved application. So any changes, minor or major, that you're making that are outside of what we already approved need to come to us for review. And all of these changes need to be reported prior to implementing them into the study. So if you're changing your consent forms or changing the questions that you're asking your interview participants, you need to send us those before you give those out to your participants. Because that's our job. Our job is to protect these participants and make sure that the risks are appropriate. We can't do that if you're already submitting totally different information than what we've previously approved. Even if the changes don't seem very big to you, it's really up to us as the IRB to determine if those changes affect the risk level of the study. And reporting those changes as an amendment really will just save you a lot of time and money in the long run. If you make a change and implement it without reporting it to the IRB, then you're going to have to submit a protocol deviation that could put your study on pause and make it to where you are not able to continue the study until that has been fully reviewed. So make sure you're planning ahead and submitting those amendments before you are actually implementing them. And like I said, the IRB is going to have to review any changes that you do to make sure that they aren't altering the previously approved protocol and don't increase the risk for participants. IRBs exist to protect human participants in research, and we can't do that if we don't have all the information, so these amendments are vital. When you're ready to submit your amendment, there are a few things you're going to want to make sure you include. The first is a post-modification form. This is just going to include a brief summary of your study and a summary of all the proposed changes that you'll be doing. You're also going to want to update your digital application, and this is really applicable when you're doing protocol modification or personnel changes. We'll also need to see any updated documentation. So if you're changing your consent forms, your recruitment materials, or data collection instruments, or the protocol itself, we're going to need to see your proposed consent forms that you've made changes on, but we're going to want to see track changes and clean copies of those. So you'll want to provide one that's totally clean, fresh face, no stamps, no nothing on it, and then we'll want to see one that highlights those changes from the previous ones. When adding personnel to the study, you're going to want to make sure to include their CV or resume, any human subject training certificates that they have, applicable licenses that we'll need to see, and HIPAA training certificates if needed to. And these personnel changes are really important to report because we need to make sure that they are qualified to be doing the study safely with your participants. So definitely make sure you include all of their qualifications. That's where that resume comes in. That's where all those certificates come in. We're going to need to see all of that to make sure that your study staff is up to par. The amendment review process on our side is pretty straightforward. All amendments are going to be reviewed by a primary reviewer. Any amendment for studies that are approved as greater than minimal risk will be reviewed by a primary reviewer as well as the full board. After review, the amendment then goes to the IRB chair for the decision letter. And that's it. Pretty straightforward process. As I previously mentioned, the easiest way to make sure this amendment process goes smoothly is to plan ahead. You want to make sure when you initially submit your study that it's fully developed, that you're not going to be adding on parts because you just thought of them later on. So make sure when you're initially submitting, you've got a fully developed study that you're submitting. But if you know that you are going to be making changes later on in your study, tell us in that initial application. Tell us that you're going to be adding parts to the study via amendment. That gives us a better overall picture of the study, and it allows us and you to prepare for these future amendments. And again, just make sure that you're cautious when you're adding these changes to your study. Make sure that they are not affecting the risk to your participants. They're not changing your study objectives. If you're changing the study population, you have to be really careful. So let's say you were working with adults previously and now you want to work with kids. That could change those risks pretty significantly. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you are cautious if you're changing the study questions, that they aren't increasing that level of risk, and overall that these changes in these amendments aren't changing the entire scope of the study. It could be something as simple as the study funder changing, but that funder could also be who your study is specifically for. They're the ones who paid for it, they're the one who want to see the results, and if funder A was approved, but funder B is a little bit different, that could be enough to make us have to submit a whole new study and change your risks. So keep that in mind. Any and all of these changes need to be really cautiously thought out for your study. Thank you so much for watching today. If you have any questions specifically about amendments or really anything to do with the IRB, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us at correspondence@solutionsirb.com or call us at 855-226-4472. We'd be really happy to talk through any amendments that you might potentially have for your study, or like I said, really anything to do with your IRB application. You can also visit our website at solutionsirb.com for more information. Thanks again.